Do one more. That's the Alamo Dome. I was going to make the ride, had the radio on, made the ride. Trump just made his statement today on the news. The media has been wanting him to condemn the Nazis and so forth. Look, I think everybody would condemn them. But I'm sure they won't drop that. And I could talk more about a bunch of issues. But I wanted you to focus today and for you to see some of that stuff. You know, I mentioned how my daughter's car got impounded and she committed no crime. Also, one day, the cops pulled my other daughter over and they lied to her. But the one, Becky, she was in her truck. They pulled her over on the highway. She asked, "Why'd you pull me over?" I think they said, you were on your phone. And Becky and Lulu told me that cop lied too. I just saw making this ride up here, there's an Amber Alert, which obviously a minor child is maybe taken, but it says call the police. Call the police. Which police do you call if they rape your child? Which police do you call if they're involved in child pornography? Which has happened. There were black women a few years ago being raped on a regular basis by a cop. Over and over and over and over. Hundreds and hundreds of black women. Eventually, that cop made a Sunday school teacher who was black give him a blowjob. And that Sunday school teacher thought she was going to be shot in the head by that cop. His name was Holtzclaw. And when the Sunday school teacher was in the hospital, a female officer from that department came to interview her. And the Sunday school teacher said, "You'll never believe this, but your officer made me give him oral sex. He just pulled me over to rape me." And the female cop on that department said, "Oh no, he's been doing that for a long time." So now we call Hidalgo police, is what it says in the envelope. Who do you call when cops are doing that? You say, well, that's the one time. No, there's a high percentage of that. I gave statistics of that. When you pull my daughter over on the highway for no reason and then lie your ass off and say you're on the phone, what other entity today, when I head back to Corpus Christi right now, what other entity am I worried? Are my friends in the street going to pull my daughter over? They can't. But can a Corpus Christi cop do it and break the law? Possibly say, the case of the lady, I think she was from Australia. She called the cops. This is national news the last few weeks. And she called the cops because I think she was reporting an assault, a sexual assault, but she called the cops. She was from Australia, became a U.S. citizen, was going to get married. And when she went up to the cop car, the other cop, there were two cops in the cop car, she walked up to the cop car because she called the cops. And that one cop who was of a different nationality pulled out his weapon and blew her away in cold blood. The other cop, sitting in the passenger seat, as the woman walked up in her pajamas, the other cop sitting in the passenger seat pulled his weapon out and murdered that woman in cold blood. And even the president leader, I think it was Australia, said, "What's going on? What's going on?" They're defending that officer. He didn't have his body camera on. Chicago cops purposefully dismantled their body cameras, which is a crime. But they've been doing that for many years. They just ripped them out of their vehicles. So who does all this? Who in this country gets away with all that? In Charlottesville, yes, it's tragic that 2 troopers were killed, as well as the incident with the Nazis and all that. Why did you mention affirmative action? Because affirmative action permits institutions, universities, and in hiring quotas, it permits discrimination only against one race, white people. And it is specifically says in many of these decisions, because of so-called diversity and all. And there was a time that we probably needed this, but now, and many legal scholars have said, it is the only institutionalized permitted racism, because it permits somebody to say, you are qualified for a job, but because you're white, you cannot get this job or you cannot get in this university. And the courts have upheld that, though it's been challenged all the way to the Supreme Court. Now, every white person and every Hispanic and black person would be able to say, wait a minute, that's discrimination. Now, some justify that. I like Cornel West, who's a philosopher, he's black. I like Cornel West and I like philosophy. And I've heard him defend it in an intellectual way. And Eric Dyson and others. But no, if you were honest about not using this like the media is using it now. I think it was Obama that had a Farrakhan at one point in one of his, there was a rally, you would have seen Farrakhan, and there are groups, black groups, that are also highly racist. But yet you're allowed, if you're a black congressman or a black president, you're allowed to associate with those groups openly. Now, I think Obama did well. I think he did well. He received criticism. As a matter of fact, from the 2 men I just mentioned, Cornel West and Dyson, he received criticism because they felt he didn't do enough for the black community. I liked Eric Holder. My conservative friends would be mad at me, because if you had a situation like we do with the Corpus Christi Police Department, you'd have, as a matter of fact, at one point the federal government, I think it was under Holder, they sued about hiring policies, talking about what I just discussed. But under Holder, if you felt like you had criminality within the department, the federal government, under Obama and Holder, they actually looked into that. Jeff Sessions, though he just announced Trump just announced that they're going to look into civil rights, what happened in Charlottesville. Of course, we condemn racism. But if you want to be balanced, you condemn all racism. You should never look at a black person or a Hispanic person and say, the reason we're going to reject you is because you're black and Hispanic. Though that has happened in the history of this country, which was wrong. And to make up for that, you shouldn't tell some young 18-year-old girl trying to get into university, you're not getting in because you're white, which has happened. So to be fair, you look at all of that. What does it tell? Oh, there's the train. We see. I'd like to get this in the background. We're not done yet today. What does it tell me when there are some good cops? And I can vouch, the internal affairs guy I spoke to, a response like I got, which I mentioned in the other video a few years back, where he showed me he knew that there was criminality. And those officers are still on the job. So, and why did I bring up the rape of that Holzclaw? Because when they went to trial, and Holzclaw got sent to prison, when they went to trial, they asked some of those black girls, why didn't you report it? And one of the black girls said, which cop do you pull when the cops themselves are raping us? Which cop do you pull when the cops are the ones raping us? I could never recommend anybody to relocate to the city of Corpus Christi. And I know more about some of this because of the ministry I do. I know more about some of this, the incident where officers in uniform went to settle a personal grievance with somebody, showed up at the house, not an official run, to settle a personal grievance and made a threat in uniform. And the person told me, I'm not going to give the whole thing because he's afraid he might get shot. Christian man. So today, what do I worry about my friends in the street killing my daughter or not? But I certainly worry that some CCPD is going to make up, just lie. Say, oh, we saw your daughter on the phone, lie. We decided to, and maybe if things got out, we just weren't sure. Because that does happen. Say, but John, there've never been a lot of reports of that. A cop ran somebody over downtown Corpus Christi. And now it might have been a year ago. I don't know if it was a black man. I think it was Agnes Street or Leopard Street. There's no doubt that cop is speeding at night without lights, which happens because cops sometimes do that, meaning there's no code 1, code 2. They're just going fast. Sometimes they, for whatever reason, they want to get back to the station or whatever. They might, but you're supposed to put lights on. But he didn't see the guy crossing the street, and he ran him over. Now, a normal city, municipality would have investigated skid marks in the road. The way the Corpus Christi Police Department dealt with that, I forget the name of the cop that ran that innocent man over. They said, oh, he's very, it's shaking him up. The media covered it like, oh, you know, it upset that officer that he ran over an innocent civilian. No investigation, nothing. And in a normal city, I'm in San Antonio, there would be a true internal affairs investigation. It would be treated, any vehicular incident, even a vehicular homicide by an officer. In a normal city, you have a procedure. They have SOPs in Corpus Christi, but these things, because nothing happened, there's no follow-up. And the reason there's laws that if you're in a fire department, which I know, or a cop car, you're not allowed to speed without emergency lights and sirens for that very reason. So what happened in that case was that cop committed a crime on whether it was a black man or a Hispanic man. It was a minority man he hit at night. But not only was there no justice there, but the media reported it, how upset that officer was. Look, officer, whether you're the one cop that choked somebody out at a party, you have another cop on the department that's had multiple. He was off duty on these things. He's beat people up multiple times at parties. Okay, this came out 6 months. Still on the department. I don't know of a department where you could have cops on and off duty committing all these types of things. I gave you the case of there's an officer, unless you're retired, he covered up the sexual assault of a child. This was in the McChester case. McChester was an officer of the CCPD and was having sex with a minor. That him and another officer were doing like security. Sad case. But the girl was brought to the hospital. I think she had an STD. She might have been drunk, but either way, she told the doctors about it. And McChester then went to, I think it was federal court in Corpus Christi. But what the public doesn't know is one of the other cops covered up for him after he had knowledge of this incident. There's a record on that. He covered up and lied during an investigation to cover up this crime. That other cop, I think, got a day off without pay, something like that. in civilian society, if you have an acknowledgement of sexual assault of a child and you cover that up, you're an accessory to that crime. There are two people that. So for the public to understand, this is all documented. Okay, that was the Manchester case. Those guys are still on the department. As Internal Affairs said to me, "What else do you have on it?" Miss Rubio, I'll end it. I want you to see the nice city of San Antonio. Let me tell you something. The police department, this is not just personal, the police department in other cities. I just gave you that ICE statistic. Houston and other cities, which are much bigger, they had less of the ICE raid arrests than Corpus. And I gave that to show you that there's corruption within the department. Meaning, maybe those who are getting paid by drug deals or whatever, some of those drug dealers are not getting arrested. Some of the meth houses are not getting shut down. There's reasons for that. So, I'll end it, at least this one, because I got to make sure the cops are not going to be pulling my daughter over. The Corpus cops running into my other friends on their bicycles, doing all they can to cover that up, possibly destroying their own incident reports. But we got to pour more money. Miss Rubio, the city councilor, we got to pour more money into this. And so we'll just end with that.